Lust is not love, it's addiction. Imagine waking up one day next to someone whose skin you once ached to touch, and realizing you don't even like the sound of their voice. You were obsessed with them. You thought it was love. You gave them your time, your body, your emotions, your future. You stared at your phone for hours, waiting for a text, a sign, a signal from them, because their attention was the drug, and you were the addict. But now, something's changed. The high is gone. And what remains? Emptiness, irritation, guilt, a hollow echo of all the fantasies you once built around them. So what happened? You thought it was love. They made your heart race. You felt butterflies. You lost sleep thinking about them. And society, movies, books, even the aching rhythm of pop songs told you, this is it. This is what love feels like. But was it? Or were you simply intoxicated by your own projections, addicted to how they made you feel about yourself? Here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to tell you. Most people have never actually loved someone. They've only been addicted to how that person made them feel. Lust is immediate. It consumes. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't wait, and it doesn't care. Lust is the fire that demands wood, even if it burns down your house. And yet, when we're drowning in it, we call it love. Because real love, the kind that grows quietly in the soil of patience, vulnerability, and truth, is almost invisible next to the fireworks of lust. But let's ask something dangerous. What if everything you called love was just emotional dependency wrapped in romantic fantasy? What if your heart wasn't leading you toward connection, but toward withdrawal symptoms? What if the butterflies were actually anxiety, a warning signal your nervous system tried to send, but you mistook it for excitement? People don't talk about this because it's inconvenient. It dismantles the fairy tale. But when you strip away the chemistry, the obsession, the dopamine-fueled highs, what's left? Do you even know the person you said you loved? Or were you simply addicted to the idea of being wanted, chosen, desired? Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And this is where the tragedy begins. We confuse lust with love, because we are unconscious of our own wounds. The need for validation masquerades as affection. The hunger to be seen gets twisted into desire. And before we know it, we're not falling in love, we're falling into patterns, reenacting the emotional dramas of our childhoods, craving approval from people who echo our oldest pain. But this illusion feels good. That's why it's so addictive. It mimics the symptoms of intimacy. While keeping true vulnerability miles away, you can crave someone's body without ever touching their soul. You can miss someone intensely without ever truly knowing who they are. You can sleep beside someone for years and still be emotionally homeless. And here's the question that breaks everything wide open. What if lust isn't a doorway to love, but a detour, one that keeps you circling around emotional hunger without ever feeding the soul? Because real love doesn't spike and crash. It doesn't leave you guessing. It doesn't manipulate with silence or bait you with attention crumbs. Real love is slow. It's stable. It reveals rather than conceals. It's not a high, it's a mirror. And maybe that's why so many people run from it. Because when the fantasy dissolves, when the ecstasy fades, you're left face to face with the truth. Not just about them, but about yourself. So I'll ask again, and this time don't answer quickly. Was it love? Or were you just addicted to the way they distracted you from your own emptiness? Let's go deeper. They say love is blind, but lust is far blinder. It doesn't just blind you to the person, it blinds you to yourself. Here's the truth behind the illusion. Lust thrives where the inner child remains wounded and unseen. It flourishes in the soul that was never taught what real safety feels like. It comes disguised as passion, but it's rooted in lack, in a psychic emptiness formed long before you ever laid eyes on the one you now can't seem to forget. Carl Jung believed that the unintegrated shadow, the part of us we disown, fear, or suppress, doesn't disappear. It simply chooses lovers on our behalf. If your shadow contains abandonment, you will be drawn magnetically to people who keep you chasing. If your shadow holds unworthiness, you will obsess over those who make you feel momentarily valuable. It isn't a coincidence. It's a pattern, a wound, calling out for repetition, hoping that this time, someone will finally love you enough to rewrite the ending. But they never do. They can't, because you're not looking for them, you're looking for you. And in that desperate search, lust becomes a kind of drug, a chemical ritual of escape. Neurologically, lust activates the brain's reward system, much like opioids or cocaine. Dopamine floods your system, making you feel alive, euphoric, chosen. But this isn't connection. It's a chemical surge attached to a fantasy. The person you crave becomes a symbol, a screen onto which you project the parts of yourself you've lost or disowned. You're not in love with them. You're in love with who you become in their gaze. And yet, it feels real. That's what makes it so dangerous. You interpret intensity as intimacy, chaos as chemistry, pain as proof of depth. But real love isn't found in the emotional roller coaster. That's the terrain of addiction. Love is clarity. Addiction is confusion. Nietzsche once warned us that people don't want the truth. They want their illusions. And nowhere is this more evident than in our attachments. We crave the story, the whirlwind romance, the uncontrollable desire, because it makes us feel significant. It gives our emptiness a plot line. But like any addiction, it wears off. And when it does, the crash is unbearable. You begin to question your worth. You mistake withdrawal for heartbreak. You chase the same dynamic again and again, thinking next time it will feel different. But the cycle doesn't break until the pattern is named. Why are we so prone to this cycle? Because real love, stable, kind, slow love, requires you to be emotionally naked, and that's terrifying. Lust, on the other hand, lets you stay masked. You can be who they want, who you want to be, or even who your younger self wished someone would finally accept. There's no demand for truth, only performance. And here's where it gets darker. Jean-Paul Sartre described human relationships as battlegrounds of control, where the gaze of the other becomes a prison. In lustful obsession, you become enslaved to the other's attention, using their desire as a mirror for your existence. Without it, you feel invisible. This isn't love. This is existential despair, disguised as romance. Modern psychology confirms what Sartre intuited. We form attachments based on early emotional blueprints. If love was unpredictable in your childhood, you will crave the same chaos later, not because you enjoy pain, but because it feels familiar. And the familiar, even when it hurts, feels safer than the unknown. This is the hidden force. We don't love from freedom, we love from repetition, until we do the inner work. Until we confront the shadow, lust will continue choosing for us. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote, rather grimly, that love is nature's trick, a delusion designed to ensure reproduction, not happiness. And while biologically he may have had a point, psychologically it runs deeper. Lust is not nature's trick, it's the ego's distraction, a way to keep you from facing yourself by seducing you with the fantasy of another. This is why the most intoxicating lust always comes with a mirror. It reflects not the person, but the version of you that you wish to be, confident, desired, alive. But that illusion always collapses, because they were never that person, and neither were you. What you were addicted to was the escapement. Once the high fades, what's left is the same you, the one who still doesn't feel whole, still doesn't feel enough, still aches for someone else to complete the sentence of your existence. This is the root of the problem. Not them, not lust, not even love, but the parts of you that still believe you are not enough on your own until those parts are healed. Every touch will feel like salvation. Every kiss will feel like rescue. And every heartbreak will feel like death, not because you lost them, but because you lost the illusion they helped you maintain. And so the question emerges, quiet and terrifying. Who are you without the craving? You think it was just a relationship, just a heartbreak, just another lesson. But beneath that lie, an entire architecture of your life was quietly rewired, you see. When you mistake lust for love, not once, but repeatedly, your psyche learns a dangerous rule. Intensity equals value. So you begin to chase what burns, not what sustains. You stop trusting peace. You start craving chaos. You reject the person who holds you gently and long for the one who disappears. It sounds irrational, but it's psychological conditioning. Your nervous system adapts to the rhythm of inconsistency. Your body begins to associate longing with connection. And over time, the very idea of being truly seen becomes unbearable. Why? Because real intimacy would demand that you drop the performance. And when you've built your identity around being desirable, rather than being known, the collapse of that image feels like death. This is the quiet tragedy playing out behind closed doors. Glowing screens and broken hearts. A generation addicted to being desired and terrified of being known. We curate profiles, poses perfect lives, not to connect, but to seduce, not to be loved, but to be consumed. Because in a world where lust has replaced love, your value isn't your depth, it's your marketability and the cost. Profound disconnection. People enter relationships not to build something sacred, but to feel something intense. We swipe, match, ghost, repeat, mistaking novelty for intimacy. We say, I love you, when we really mean, I'm addicted to how you make me feel right now. But the second that feeling shifts, when reality replaces projection, we panic. We feel trapped, bored, anxious. We think we've fallen out of love. But what's actually happening is this. The fantasy is collapsing under the weight of the real person. And in that moment, the addiction screams for its next fix. This is why people cheat. Why they leave without explanation. Why they ghost you after months of vulnerability. It's not always because they're cruel. Sometimes it's because they can't handle withdrawal. They were never in love with you. They were in love with the escape. And when you stopped being the drug, they went searching for another dealer. Society rewards this. It sells lust as liberation. It calls impulsivity freedom. It tells you to follow your heart, even when your heart is confused, traumatized, and deeply wounded. But what it doesn't tell you is this. When lust governs your choices, your life becomes a graveyard of almost loves. And it's not just romantic. This pattern bleeds into everything. You start lusting after success, not fulfillment. You crave applause, not impact. You chase dopamine, not meaning. The architecture of addiction is the same. A brief high, followed by emptiness. Then the hunt begins again. More stimulation, more validation, more, always more. Until one day you wake up, surrounded by everything you once wanted, and realize you still feel hollow. This is the consequence no one warns you about. You begin to distrust love. You think real connection is boring. You confuse trauma bonding with soul connection. And worst of all, you lose faith in yourself. You ask, why does this keep happening to me? But deep down, a part of you already knows. Because you saw the red flags, and you painted them white. Because your soul whispered, this isn't safe. And your loneliness replied, but it feels like home. Because every time you gave your body to someone who hadn't earned your soul, you taught yourself that love is something you must perform for. And slowly, piece by piece, your identity was built around being desirable, not being you. You became what they wanted. You wore what pleased them. You said what seduced them. You silenced your truth to keep their attention, until you forgot what your truth even sounded like. This is what happens when lust becomes your compass. You lose your direction, you betray yourself, and you call it love. But perhaps the most haunting consequence is this. You begin to believe that you are only worthy when you are wanted. This belief is not benign. It becomes the foundation of your relationships, your ambitions, even your spirituality. You don't seek truth, you seek admiration. You don't build, you seduce. And deep inside, the child you once were, the one who just wanted to be loved for who they were, watches silently, wondering if they were ever enough without the performance. So let me ask you, with no pretense, no mask, no echo of pop culture romance, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when no one desires you? And can you still love that version of yourself? Or do you abandon them the second the mirror vanishes? Because if not, then lust didn't just hijack your love life, it hijacked your sciv. If addiction is the cycle, then awareness is the first crack in the cage. Not the kind of awareness that makes you feel guilty, not the self-help, feel-good awareness that sits nicely on an Instagram quote, the kind that burns, the kind that forces you to sit in front of your reflection and admit, I have confused lust with love. I have used people to escape myself, and I have sacrificed truth for attention. That moment, that brutal, honest recognition, is where the rebellion begins. You don't break free from lust by avoiding people who make you feel things. You break free by confronting the part of you that needs them to feel whole. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the integration of the shadow. It means no longer outsourcing your healing to lovers, no longer waiting for someone to choose you, see you, save you, because no one is coming to save you. And if they did, you'd make them your addiction too. The first step of liberation is withdrawal, not just from a person, but from a pattern. You must be willing to feel the ache of emptiness, without filling it, the itch to reach out, to check their profile, to replay the fantasy. Feel it, sit with it, let it scream, because that scream is not about them, it's your inner child. begging you not to abandon yourself again. You see, addiction to lust is not about pleasure, it's about distraction. It keeps you from sitting with your own aloneness. But here's the paradox. It's only by entering that aloneness that you find the self, who doesn't need to be chased or chosen. The real rebellion is this: to sit in a room alone, unchosen, untouched, and still feel worthy. When that happens, when your nervous system no longer equates attention with safety, the spell breaks, and you begin to love differently. You stop chasing potential and start honoring reality. You stop needing grand gestures and start valuing presence. You stop trying to become someone's fantasy and start becoming your truth. This shift is seismic. It rearranges who you are, because now you can look at someone and feel the pull of lust and choose not to follow it. Not because you're repressing desire, but because you recognize when desire is rooted in your trauma, not your truth. You become dangerous, not to others, but to the systems within you that once controlled your life. You recognize the red flags not as signs of a thrilling love story, but as reminders of your old wound begging to be reopened. And you say, "Not this time." That is how you reclaim power. Arthur Schopenhauer said, "Mostly it is loss which teaches us about the worth of things." But what if the loss you needed wasn't of a person, but of your illusions? What if the greatest thing you could lose is the belief that you must be desired to be valuable? Because once that's gone, once that parasite dies, real love finally has space to enter. Love that doesn't thrill you into oblivion but grounds you into reality. Love that isn't performative but healing. Love that doesn't feel like a drug, but like coming home. And yes, it will feel boring at first, because you're used to the high. You're used to confusing nervous system dysregulation for passion. You're used to lust screaming so loudly that you mistake it for fate. But stay through the stillness, stay through the quiet, stay long enough to meet the version of you that doesn't need the chase anymore. That version of you is your liberation, and they were buried beneath the addiction all along. So break the pattern, block the number, not to punish them, but to protect you. Go no contact, not to manipulate, but to detox. Cry, rage, scream into your pillow, and still choose not to return, because you're not healing for them. You're healing for the younger you, the one who was never taught the difference between craving and connection. And maybe, just maybe, one day, when the addiction no longer drives your desire, when you are loved for your truth, not your mask, you'll smile softly and whisper, "I finally understand love. It's not fire, it's not hunger, it's not obsession. It's the stillness I used to run from. It's the truth I used to fear. And now I'm home." There's a moment in healing that no one prepares you for. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with fireworks or closure texts or late-night apologies from the one who broke you. It arrives in silence, so quietly you almost miss it. You're walking down the street, maybe holding a coffee, maybe lost in thought. The sky is just gray enough to feel like something could shift. You pass a couple holding hands. You remember what it felt like to reach for someone with hunger instead of peace. And suddenly, you realize you no longer miss the chaos. It doesn't sting anymore. It doesn't pull. The fantasy doesn't seduce. The memory doesn't haunt. You don't want them back, not even as a friend, not even in your mind. But here's the strange part. It's not because they changed, it's because you did. And in that moment, you touch something that no addiction can mimic. Self-belonging. Not self-love in the trendy, packaged, easy-to-sell way, but the raw, bloody kind, the kind that emerges only after you've sat with your pain long enough to stop blaming it on others, the kind that whispers, "I was never broken, just unclaimed. I was never unworthy, just unfamiliar with my own reflection." This is the sacred turning point, because the greatest lie addiction tells you is that love exists outside of you, that you must earn it, that it is a reward for being attractive enough, clever enough, available enough, submissive enough, exciting enough. But real love doesn't arrive when you become perfect. It begins the moment you stop abandoning yourself to be chosen by someone else. This truth is inconvenient. It doesn't sell well. You can't buy it, flaunt it, or Instagram it, because self-belonging is a quiet revolution. It's the way you stop negotiating your truth to avoid loneliness. It's the way you stop pretending your silence means peace when it really meant repression. It's the way you stop seeing your body as bait and start treating it as a temple. In that space, that sacred space of not needing to be wanted, something extraordinary begins to happen. You can finally love without clinging. You can finally desire without demanding. You can finally connect without dissolving. Because love, in its highest form, is not a drug, it is a mirror. It doesn't complete you, it reflects you. And when you are whole, what it reflects back is not longing, but harmony. You were never looking for love, not really. We're searching for something far more sacred. Something words rarely capture, something only silence reveals. You were looking for reunion, not with another person, but with yourself. Every obsession, every fantasy, every sleepless night, aching for their return. It was never about them, it was the soul's cry to come back home, to the place before the mask, before the performance, before you believed you had to earn affection with your suffering. And now, at the end of it all, you finally see it. Lust was never the enemy, it was the teacher. And the lesson was this: you cannot possess what you haven't become. You craved someone to make you feel alive, because you were numb to your own breath. You wanted someone to validate your worth, because you had forgotten how to witness your own beauty. You chased intensity because peace felt unfamiliar. You confused abandonment with passion, because that's what your wounds were trained to recognize as love. But here's the truth, the one that doesn't come wrapped in romance or religion. You don't find love, you return to it, you become it. And when you do, when your entire being radiates wholeness, you stop searching, not because you've given up, but because you finally realize love isn't something you get, it's something you give, freely, without addiction, without collapse, without need. And paradoxically, when you stop chasing love, it finds you, not in the way the movies promised, not in dramatic reunions or twin flame fantasies, but in the simple act of existing, fully, authentically. You. Maybe it's the friend who sees your soul without asking you to shrink. Maybe it's the stranger whose presence feels like still water. Maybe it's the quiet moment when you stand in the mirror and, for the first time in your life, don't flinch. Because when you are no longer ruled by lust, when the addiction ends, you're free. Free to choose love. Not because it fills a void, but because it amplifies the beauty that's already there. And when two whole beings meet from that place, not craving, not clinging, but simply being, something divine happens. Not fireworks, not chaos, but resonance. A love that doesn't demand, love that doesn't fear silence, a love that doesn't burn you to prove it's real. Just presence. Depth. Truth. You single quotes LL look back one day at the pain, the nights you wept over someone who never saw you, the years spent addicted to being desired, and you'll say, with a gentle smile, thank you, because without that ache, you would have never awakened. Without that illusion, you would have never sought truth. Without that addiction, you would have never returned home. And now, you're here, awake, whole, unshaken. You don't need to be wanted to feel worthy. You don't need to be touched to feel divine. You don't need anyone to choose you, because you already did. And that is love. Don't rush to fix. Don't rush to find. Sit with what hurts. Let it teach you. Let it melt you. Let it reveal you. And when you rise, and you will, don't rise as someone desperate to be loved. Rise as someone who has become love itself. Unshakable, undeniable, unforgettable. Now go, enter the world. But this time, bring yourself with you. If this message touched something buried deep within you, if you saw yourself in these words, not as a victim, but as a soul awakening, then stay with that feeling. Don't run from it. Don't scroll away. Because healing begins where illusion ends. And today, something inside you chose truth. Now, imagine what happens when you keep choosing it every day, every breath, every moment. So if this video resonated, truly, deeply resonated, then you're not alone in this journey. There are others waking up to right here, right now. Drop a comment below. Tell us what part hit the hardest, what memory resurfaced, what mask you're finally ready to take off. And if you're ready to walk this path of depth, truth, and self, then subscribe. Not for content, but for connection. Because this channel isn't just about videos, it's a mirror. And the more you show up as you are, the clearer your reflection becomes. Welcome home. Subscribe. Share this with someone who's still confusing the high of being wanted with the peace of being loved. And turn on the bell so the next time your soul forgets, you'll be reminded.